Hello, everyone, and hope you're doing great today. Hope you've had a wonderful start to your week. Hope you're enjoying the new year, and hope you have also had a great January. Welcome to the second episode of this very insightful, illuminating, instructive, and hopefully policy-rich program dedicated to helping nations build national innovation systems for absorptive capacity, right? I would say that again. This program is dedicated towards helping nations to build and strengthen national innovative systems for absorptive capacity, right? And therefore, the title of the program is Developing National Innovation Systems for Absorptive Capacity. We started last week, Tuesday, January 7, 2025, and we are continuing this week. And I'm going to be sharing quickly some of the highlights from last week. But first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Tolu Omoda. It's a joy, it's a pleasure, it's a delight to be with you on the second episode of the program. And we're going to have another interesting and enlightening time together. So, last week, we talked about two parts of the program's theme. Remember, the title of the program is Developing National Innovation Systems for Absorptive Capacity. So we said there are two parts of these themes. The first part is the national innovation systems. And the second part, of course, is the end to which national innovation systems should be developed as far as this program is concerned, which is absorptive capacity, right? Now, absorptive capacity, for those who probably didn't join last week or who were not on the predecessor program, which we had last quarter, that is developing a national human capital policy. We spoke a lot about absorptive capacity there, and is essentially ensuring that you are directing either the knowledge you are generating or the innovation you are creating towards your economic and social development. I repeat, absorptive capacity there has to do with ensuring that the knowledge being created, in case you are trying to become a knowledge economy, or the innovation you are creating as part of your knowledge economy, is directed towards enhancing your economic and social development as a nation. Very, very important. This way, innovation is being channeled towards economic performance, right? And this is one of the things we discussed last week, right? So, having established the fact that there are two parts of this thing, the national innovation systems and the absorptive capacity, which I just spoke quickly about, we then try to discuss what exactly is a national innovation system. We began by looking at the word system. I remember saying that a national innovation system is a system. Very, very important, right? It's a nation structure for enhancing its innovative competitiveness on the global scale. I'll say that again. A national innovation system is a nation structure for enhancing its innovative competitiveness on the global scale. Of course, there are nations that have already built national innovation systems, like the United States, like United Kingdom, like France, like Italy, like Germany, and there are so-called industrializing nations that are also progressing in their attempt to do this, like Korea, South Korea, Taiwan, Brazil, Argentina. So wherever you're listening to me from Nigeria, from Ethiopia, from Ghana, from South Korea, from wherever you may be joining from, right? There is a lot of opportunity for you to build a national innovation system in case you don't have one yet, or to strengthen your national innovation system in case you already have one, right? Now, what exactly makes a national innovation system is a system, right? It's because it's a network. Take note of that word, a network of institutions, government agencies, mechanisms, and private sector firms and policies that are articulated, created, managed, and coordinated to enhance innovation in a nation. I'll say that again. What makes a national innovation system a system is that it is a network of institutions, related institutions, agencies, networks, and policies that are articulated, created, managed, and coordinated to enhance innovation in a nation. This was one of the points we made last week, right? Now, when you have a national innovation system, what you have to understand is that, of course, it's a system, but it's a system targeted at innovation, And that brings us to the second word we looked at last week. What exactly is innovation, right? Innovation is largely about researching and experimenting. And the reason why we are in researching and experimenting ultimately is for novelty, for creation and novelty, right? Innovation is largely about researching and experimenting. And the reason why we are researching and experimenting is ultimately for creation and permits me to add recreation, like we said last week, and novelty, right? Recreation because sometimes it's not really about just creating something entirely new, right? Innovation is sometimes about, establishing what has been created, expanding what has been created, perfecting what has been created, so that you can then scale what has been created, right? And this process of trying, retrying is very critical to innovation, especially when you think about innovation in the broad sense of the word, which includes the possibility of economic performance, exploring what does it take to make this economically viable, right? The scalability, if I can use that word, of innovation often comes through this process of variegation. Variegation there means trying, retrying, testing and retesting, learning, adapting, and so on and so forth. So innovation is not always about completely new creations. Sometimes it's about improving existing work. And as a matter of fact, one critical point we made last week is that before you take the path of commercialization, you must first take the route of increase in perfection. I'm going to say that again. Before you take the path of commercialization, you must first take the route of increase in perfection. Very, very, very important, right? We are innovating. Like I said, innovation considers the possibility of economic performance, but before you try to, profit from innovation, which is something we're going to talk a little bit more about today, before you try to profit from innovation, you have to ensure that you have taken it through a process of testing and retesting, of piloting, and ensuring that by the time you launch it on the commercial scale, you have taken it through a lot of perfections, right? And today we're going to look at three segments very quickly, right? There are three segments we're going to look at, building on some of the things we said last week. We're going to first look at three possible structures for, you might want to say, the research and development part of innovation. I'll say that again. Three possible structures for the research and development part of innovation. Secondly, we are going to look at partnerships between industrial research laboratories and universities. I'll say that again. We're going to look at partnerships between industrial research laboratories and universities, right? And finally, we're going to look at profiting from innovation, which I just talked about. Now, as we prepare to look at those things, let me quickly mention something. You have to understand that innovation is broader than research and development. Very important, right? That's why I said we're going to look at three possible structures for the research and development part of innovation, because that's not the only part to innovation. Research and development is definitely a strong part of innovation, but it's not the only part of innovation, especially when you're thinking about scaling, profiting, economic performance, which is the absorptive capacity that we have been emphasizing from the beginning of this program. Now, you may want to ask, what are the other parts of innovation? If research and development is not the only part of innovation, then what are the other parts of innovation? The other parts of innovation include, of course, the planning, right? So there is the planning part of the research and development, very important. The planning part of the research and development. Then after the research and development has taken place, there's also the production, the actual, production, which often begins with, inventing, manufacturing, and then it goes through that process of perfecting. And of course, there is the marketing, also very, very important, especially when you start thinking of commercialization, when you start thinking of, scaling, when you start thinking of economic performance, right? When you start thinking of profiting from innovation, like I said. So yes, research and development is a very important part of the innovation process, but it is not the only part of innovation process. It is a part of it, but it's not the only part of it. The planning of the research and development is also very, very important. The actual production after you have gleaned insights, from the research, and then you now go to the marketing part as well after you have done your best to take it through a process of testing and retesting, and you have tried to perfect the invention. Then you must be ready to take it to the commercial scale, right? You must be ready to commercialize it, and marketing is also part of that. You have to commercialize, and in commercializing, you have to think of the marketing of the innovation. Very important, right? So, having answered the question, in case you're asking, so what are the other parts of innovation in addition to research and development? Having answered that question, now let's talk about that research and development parts of innovation. So what are the three possible structures for this research and development part of innovation? One, university laboratories. Of course, very, very important. We said this last week and we still stand by it, right? Universities and research institutes are not the only platforms for innovation, but they are, especially for the research and development part of innovation, but they are definitely a very important part of the network of related institutions, mechanisms, agencies, and so on that form part of the innovation system. So one structure, of course, are the university laboratories. Another structure are government facilities, very, very important, right? We're going to talk a little bit more about that, government facilities. We talk about what some nations have done and are doing in terms of that. And of course, there's a third part, the industrial research laboratories, very important. The industrial research laboratories. The industrial research laboratories are more private sector oriented. Last week, we talked about private sector organizations that are willing to fund research, very important, right? And we're going to also talk about private sector organizations this week that are also funded. What about that? Sometimes you also have government actually providing the resources for private sector organizations to be funded. So let's look quickly at these three possible structures for the research and development part of innovation, right? The universities, what shape does it take? What form could it possibly take? Now, in developing your national innovation system, one thing you want to think about, I would like to talk about the basic sciences and the applied sciences. The basic sciences and the applied sciences. Of course, many times when we want to look at universities as part of the structure for national innovation systems, nations can do a lot of, or tend to focus a lot. Some nations tend to focus a lot on the applied sciences, which is very understandable. This is when we are directing research at specific problems that we are trying to solve, right? And so the institutions, the research institutions within universities are created specifically to target certain problems. So for instance, you may want to look at something like enhancing the perfection of artificial intelligence. I'm just using that as an example. And so a university or government may fund the creation of an institute that is directed towards perfecting artificial intelligence as a technology, right? Because artificial intelligence, a lot has been invested into artificial intelligence, billions of dollars have been invested into artificial intelligence, but as of now, there are still, sometimes claims, sometimes legal disputes as to the perfection of artificial intelligence. I was reading of a case where some people sued a health insurance agency saying that artificial intelligence was used to determine whether or not their family members should have been given attention or prioritized, and eventually those family members unfortunately passed, and they are suing the health insurance because they are questioning the perfection of the artificial intelligence. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not getting into the artificial intelligence debate as to whether or not humans should still be allowed to weigh in after the artificial intelligence has made its recommendations. There's still a lot that has to go into the perfection of that science or technology, and that is the point I am making about research and development institutions, especially those that are based in universities that are targeted towards solving specific problems. That's why you're looking at the applied science, right? A national innovation system in developing a policy or a structure or in refining what you have. Sometimes you can look at the university laboratories that are targeted towards solving specific issues. And that happens a lot in many nations. Many nations, invest a lot of resources in applied science university laboratories. Apply them, meaning they are targeted towards solving specific issues, and that has been very helpful in the past, right? That has proven very useful in the past, and is something that we can continue to do. We can continue to fund university laboratories that are targeted at solving critical issues or current areas of research, right? Or current technological gaps, if I can say that, right? Like the example I just gave, like how can we further perfect artificial intelligence? Or maybe I should use the word further improve, because there's always a room for improvement. How can we further improve artificial intelligence to minimize the risks and the gaps and to increase the confidence? Much as some will still argue, I, for instance, may still argue that there is still space for human intervention, right? Like the point being made is that even before the human intervention, how can we ensure that we perfect this artificial intelligence technology as much as possible? So sometimes the structure, the research and development part of innovation, right, has university laboratories targeted towards applied science, and that is great. Another thing, though, is that there should still also be an adequate amount of attention paid to basic science. Very, very, very important, right? Because basic science creates the foundation for applied science. So that's just the balance there, right? In as much as we are creating institutes, right, research institutes in university laboratories that are targeted at specific issues, we must also continue to fund research into basic science, because this often creates the foundation that will then be built upon in applied science. This is a very critical point to note. So we've looked at the university laboratories as part of three possible structures for the research and development part of innovation. The second, of course, are government facilities. Very, very important. Government facilities. Government facilities are public sector agencies that are specifically directed, again, more towards applied science, right? They identify certain areas that are of critical national interest, and they fund these areas very specifically. I'll give you an example. One of the examples that I like, I think that I think up to the Second World War, right? Until the Second World War, Germany was the clear leader in the field of aerodynamics, in the science of aerodynamics. However, there is probably a correlation between this leadership in aerodynamics and the fact that government was directly involved in funding it and supporting it, right? So they were probably the leader because they had what they call the Wilhelm there is WILHALM, right? Wilhelm Institute for Fluid Mechanics. And this fluid mechanics was something that a particular researcher called Prandtl, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his name well, is Prandtl, right? He made a lot of contributions. In fact, a lot of his theoretical contributions form the basis for Germany's leadership in this field of aerodynamics. So it didn't just happen like I've been saying since last week on this program, right? When you create a national innovation strategy, when you create a national innovation system, typically it's because you have specific innovation goals that you want to achieve to enhance your innovative competitiveness on the global scale as a nation, right? And then you begin to invest and direct efforts strategically in the areas of those policy goals. Very, very important. So government facilities, government laboratories are also a very important part of this. And when you see the outcomes at the national level, like Germany's leadership in the field of aerodynamics up to the Second World War, it's because they have certain investments, certain efforts have preceded it, right? And that's not just the only example. I think the United States also invested a lot in agricultural sciences very deliberately. So they had this, what they call the agricultural experimentation stations that was deliberately attached to land grants, in the universities in the United States, right? So universities were specifically given land grants, and they also had agricultural experimentation stations, and this became an important source, a critical source of new technology for farmers, as well as a wide range of agricultural product processing industries. So if you see a certain level of growth in agriculture in the United States, a certain level of innovative competitiveness, again, it did not just happen, right? There were government-supported laboratories that specifically were channeled towards enhancing the growth of the United States in agricultural innovation. Very, very specific. And it gave very specific, very targeted, very strategic, very intentional, right? And it produced outcomes of innovative competitiveness for the United States in the field of agriculture. Of course, this is probably supposed to be a very well-known fact. Nuclear energy is another area where the United States government specifically funded, very deliberately funded, right? And so if you see them, having leadership in the area of nuclear energy, again, it did not just happen. It was specifically funded. There were government laboratories that were deliberately targeted at this. So that's another part of the possible structure with the research and development, or for the research and development part of innovation. Remember, the first one, of course, are university laboratories. Those ones clearly reside in the universities, but that doesn't mean that the universities are doing it alone. We're going to talk more about that, but the universities are taking the lead on that. And secondly, of course, are the government laboratories. Now, the third one I find very interesting are the industrial research laboratories. These ones reside with the private sector. The industrial research laboratories. And sometimes, like I said last week, the private sector funds this, but they do not do it alone. Very, very important. And sometimes government actually also funds it, right? It can go either way, and sometimes it's a partnership. Now, why I find this third one very, very important is because there is a critical town and gown partnership that is very necessary for innovation. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. Remember, we've been saying since last week that there is a creation part of innovation and there's a recreation part of innovation. There is an improving perfection that is very critical, especially before you go for commercialization, before you begin to scale, before you begin to attain economic performance that is desired, where you have your absorptive capacity. Before you do all that, you have to improve and make sure that you're perfecting innovation. Now, this perfection usually does not reside with the universities as much as it does with the industries. I'm going to say that again. The process of perfecting the innovation is something that private sector laboratories, right, the industrial research laboratories that largely reside in private sectors tend to be better at, and I'm going to explain why. So typically, the universities are good at researching, right? The university laboratories are good at establishing theories. They are good at creating for the first time, right? But when it comes to that increasing perfection, you see, when a technology has been created and has been, in existence for a while, usually there is a level of, understanding of the strengths and weaknesses of that innovation, right? And the areas where improvements will produce economic payoffs that is required. A level of understanding of what are the strengths of this technology, what are the weaknesses of this technology, and what are the areas of improvements that will produce big payoffs. That level of understanding usually does not reside in the universities, because many times those who have used the technologies are not the universities. The technologies have been created many times by the universities. Beautiful. Very, very important. The creation is often very well done by university laboratories, but the recreation that would typically come from the data that has been gathered about the strengths and weaknesses of the technology, where it needs to be improved, that understanding usually resides with the industry, with the private sectors. Why? Because normally they are the ones that have interacted more with the customers, they are the ones that have interacted more with the users, the feedback has come to them. And that's why this third structure for research and development part of innovation in the national level is also very, very important. The university laboratories, like I said, are very, very important for the creation of brand new technologies. I gave the example of fluid mechanics, right? Prandtl did that in Germany. He did a great work with fluid mechanics. He laid the foundation for so many theories. A lot of theories are attributed to him today, right? But when it came to perfecting those theories, many times it was the private sector that had been, using the innovations that had been created that would often be better at perfecting that innovation. Very, very, very important, right? So as good as the work Prandtl did, he's known for so many theories, the lifting line theory, he's known for Prandtl box wings. So many things are named after him because of the fantastic work he did, the remarkable work he did, the legendary work he did, the iconic work he did in the field of aerodynamics. But again, when it comes to perfecting that, this was work he did in a government established, laboratory and university, a very admired and commendable aerospace scientist, beautiful. But when it came to perfecting those things, especially to the scalable level, they had to revert or partner, let me use that word, right? They had to partner more with a research-based industrial laboratories. They are industrial, they are private sector led, but they are also research oriented. So take note of those three things. And that brings me to the second point I want to make very quickly. I've talked about the three possible structures for the research and development part of innovation: university laboratories, government facilities, and industrial research laboratories. Now the second part is the partnership between industrial research laboratories and universities. And I just talked about it, but let me speak a little bit more. Very, very important. This town and gown partnership is honestly a sine qua non for absorptive capacity to be realized from national innovation systems. Extremely important. A sine qua non there means it's non-negotiable. It is very, very critical. It is a basic and non-negotiable requirement for there to be optimum gains from national innovation systems. The partnership between industrial research laboratories and universities, in other words, the partnership between the town and the ground, must be enhanced, and policy must be directed at enhancing these partnerships, right? I'll give you one or two examples that I've seen and that I really think are things to be emulated. Your nation can look at it. If you're doing it already, please do it more. If you're not doing it, consider it, right? For instance, some universities in some nations are actually mandated to support industries. Some research universities are specifically mandated to support industry, specific industry. One example, this was not necessarily mandated, but is also helped, is in the field of, I think, pharmacy, right? There have been instances where when universities are created, especially universities that have an interest in medicine or medical sciences, they begin to identify pharmaceutical organizations that they can partner with. So the moment they are creating, they are also creating with the mind of recreating. They know that the things they are creating, these universities dedicated to medical sciences and are interested in pharmacy, know that the things they are creating, the innovations they are making would have to be tested by the pharmacies, and the pharmacies are more likely to be able to help with the recreation of those technologies. Those university laboratories that are interested in medical technologies or pharmaceutical inventions begin to partner more with the pharmacies around them, right? I actually like the cases where some of these innovation partnerships between the town and ground is mandated. right? And I'm using the word mandated, not necessarily because I believe it has to be autocratic all the time, but I just think that incentives can come in many forms, right? I feel like that is important to there are some that should be supported, there are some that should be facilitated, there are some that should be rewarded, there are some that should be enhanced, but I also think that some should be mandated. That's my honest take on that, right? Because the partnership between industrial research laboratories and universities, the partnership between the town and gown is so critical that we cannot leave it to chance. I've been very passionate about bridging the strategy performance gap or building the policy practice gap for over a decade. This is something I've been researching probably since 2008 in many fields. And for me, I think that is quite underwhelming to see how much opportunities for optimization are lost because of, suboptimal partnership between the town and gown. And that's why I'm using the word mandated. Like I said, I'm not trying to be unnecessarily autocratic. I just think that sometimes it's next to frustrating to see how much opportunities are lost because the town is too separate from the gown. And that's why, for me, I think I like the example I read while preparing for this program, when I saw that some nations actually mandated a certain level of partnership between the town and the gown. And the third thing we are talking about today is profiting from innovation. Profiting from innovation. There are three basic steps that nations have to think. Of course, we've talked about the first one, which is the planning of the innovation itself, the kind of research and development. The second one is the production. We've talked a little bit about the production, from the invention to the recreation, right? And then as much as there's as much as there after as much perfection has been done, right? After as much, because like I said, there was always room for improvement. So after as much perfection has been done and testing and retesting, then scaling should be done for commercialization. So there's the plan of innovation. If you want to profit from innovation, of course, you have to first plan for innovation. Then you have to do the production, which is the actual invention, right? So you've developed the theory if you're starting with the science before the technology, or you've created the product if you're starting with the technology before the science, whichever way you want to go. But after the theory or has been articulated and there has been an invention, or there has been an invention, then you now begin to try to produce on a large scale. And of course, when you have done as much perfection as possible and you're ready to go to market, there must also be marketing. Very, very important. If you're trying to profit from innovation, there must also be marketing. We have to think about how do we want to market this innovation on a large scale, right? Especially after we have tested and perfected and done as much as we can to, to strengthen, to establish, and I'm being very careful to say as much as we can, because I also don't believe in analysis paralysis, right? Because even though it took about 3 decades after the Wright brothers invented the airplane, right? Even though it took about 3 decades after then for it to be produced on a scale where you can now fly commercial levels, the truth is that the perfecting of that technology has still continued, right? A lot is still being done, and that's why even up to 1945, up to 2000, and so on and so forth, a lot is being done to build on what was created in 1903, right? So that's why I said as much as possible, as after as much perfection as possible has been done, then it would be time to go to market if you're going to profit from that innovation. Very, very important. And this is where we have to talk about the entrepreneurial spirit, the risk-taking spirit, and so on and so forth. Again, you're going to do everything you can to perfect. You're going to do everything you can to fine-tune, to test and retest, to get feedback from the market, to begin on a small scale. Don't forget, you pilot. Even when you're commercializing, you still start on a small scale, right? The change management is very important. The change leadership. If you're introducing a new product, or you're modifying, or you are recreating, you have to manage change, and that's a whole stream. I think we have a program on that. I think my colleague, Dr. Titula, did a whole program about 2 years ago that you will find on our ARC YouTube page, Amoge Radio Communications YouTube page, that will talk about change leadership. So yes, there's a whole science behind how to introduce new things to the market. And we'll talk about marketing of innovation in our subsequent episodes of this program. But the truth is that you are going to have to take that risk. You're going to have to test the market at some point. That's why I'm saying the balance is having done all that you can to perfect as much as possible, to learn, to test. You must be ready to go to market, even if you're starting on a small scale. Wow. This is where we're going to draw the curtain on today's edition of the program. It's been a joy. It's been a delight to share these thoughts with you. Today we looked at three things. One, possible structure for the research and development part of innovation, the university laboratories, the government facilities, and the industrial research laboratories. Very, very important. We now talk about the partnership between these industrial research laboratories and the universities, essentially the partnership between the town and ground. And we also talk about profiting from innovation, which definitely would include the marketing of the innovation after the innovation has been created and it has been produced and it has been tested and retested and refined as much as possible. At some point, we are going to have to take it to the market. Thank you very much again for doing this with us. My name remains Tolu Amadara. It's been a joy. It's been a delight sharing my thoughts with you on how we can develop national innovation systems or strengthen existing national innovation systems. We've shared some basic steps that can be taken, and I look forward to being back with you same time, same station next week to continue the streams and to continue to share practical steps that can be taken in developing the national innovation systems. Until I see you same time, same station next week, remember we have a plethora of programs, if you can use that word, that you can join and you can also catch up on our YouTube page. I really encourage you to subscribe to Amoge's Radio Communications YouTube page. Just check out Amoge Radio Communications. We have over 150 programs, 150 broadcasts across different ranges of issues, from strategy to politics to sports to economics. Fantastic, rich evidence-based policy programs for the private sector, for the public sector, for government, for non-profits, for leaders, for young people, like a wider range of programs that you will benefit tremendously from, right? And my colleagues will be with you tomorrow, and I will continue to come to you all through the days of the week, and you will learn a lot from us. And we also look forward to learning from you. We look forward to receiving your feedback. Your feedback matters a lot to us. You are the reason why we do this. If we don't hear back from you, then there's no point to it in a sense, right? So we look forward to hearing back from you. Send us a message, contact@theamoge.org. Follow us on Facebook, follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on Instagram. We really, really, really look forward to being with you all the time we do this. We are very exhilarated, not just excited, but we're also very glad to do this. Once I see you same time, same station next week, remember, think innovation systems, and also if you're responsible for planning innovation or even influencing innovation or demanding innovation as the occupier of the highest office of the land, which is the office of the citizen, remember these are some of the things you can take to your government or take to your policymakers and begin to ask questions around. Thank you very much again. I'll be back same time, same station next week. Until then, keep thinking innovation, keep thinking national innovation, and keep thinking systems and structures for enhancing, supporting, and strengthening national innovation for global competitiveness. Thank you.